everybody. Happy Sunday. So I hope everybody had a really nice Labor Day weekend. It was a little weird here, but I had a Labor Day weekend. I had 3 days off. It was nice. I got to go shopping one day for a little bit, so a couple hours. So how was everybody's Labor Day weekend? Hello. I did get a lot of work done this week, though. I've been home a lot. Dad hasn't been feeling well, so I've been home a lot. And so I got a bunch of stuff done. I'm seeing who all's coming in. So I got a bunch of stuff done for the next class. And I put all the pictures and all the events up for the Gather Together bench pillow. So if you give me just a second, I'll turn off the banner. And so I got all those done, and I got the pillow here. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's so big. But this is Gathered Together. This was really fun to do. I can kind of hold it up sideways. But there's a wreath on one side, and then there's a two hooping multi-hoop design on the other side. And then this border, this braid border that's so pretty, is actually done in the hoop, so it's cool. And then I had some really cool fabric to put on the back. It says Happy Fall on it and just had a nice fall design. So that was something that I had in my stash somewhere. So, but anyway, I did get this done. And oops, let me go back to the comments again here. Get my screen turned back over. And so anyway, I worked on this over the weekend and got the pillow form in it and got a picture, and then so we're going to start this in October. We're actually going to kind of start in September. The last week in September, we're going to do we're going to do a scan and cut class, and we're going to talk about working with the SVG files. SVG files are a little different to work with. So I thought, well, let's just cut some fabric, and I'm going to cut the fabric for that pillow. That pillow has a lot of applique. So if you have the option of cutting, you may really like that. So I decided, let's just make it a class, and we'll talk about the SVG files, and I'll show you how I cut them. And then, so that's what we're going to do the last weekend in September. So we'll do that. And then in most of the month of October will be the pillow, because the pillow is actually, there's quite a little bit to it. You know, the braid takes a while, and you got to put it together, and then we're going to quilt it before we do the embroidery. So we're going to quilt it with the clear blue tiles, and then we're going to embroider it and put it together. So I think it'll be really fun. It's a fun project, and it was challenging. I'm not going to lie. It was a little challenging. I ran across a little problem. So we'll see if it happens again when I go to teach it. If the same problem happens, then I can show you how I fixed the problem. So I had Jan had a little problem with the multi-hooped panel, which I wasn't expecting to, but evidently I either moved something or something didn't quite line up right. And so it didn't quite work, but we got it fixed, and I think it looks just fine. So, okay. So tonight, we are going to work on the borders and the flanges of the Halloween pillow. So here's the Halloween pillow, and we're going to work on these little borders, what size did you use? What size did I use what? I'm not sure who asked that. Just a second. Let me see if I can find my, whoops. For some reason, here it is. A second. What size did you use? So I'm not sure what that means. Oh, what size did I use for the multi-hoop part of the pillow? I used the 9x14. So yeah, the 9x14. I didn't use the smaller one. The only difference between the 6x10 and the 9x14 would be you just have to hoop it a couple extra times for the 6x10. It's not like you can't do it. It's just done the same way. You just got to hoop it a couple more times. So I figured I'm going to hoop it as few times as possible. So, which would be the 9x14. So I'm going to use the 9x14. Okay. All right. So tonight we're going to work on these little borders, which are these little narrow ones, and the flanges. Oh yeah. Wasn't it a beautiful day today? Oh my gosh. And so as soon as I put this camera down, I'm going to open my door up behind here because there's just a beautiful breeze coming in this west door. So it makes it so much cooler out here. So, but I'm going to do, so when I do these borders and flanges, I normally like to quilt my borders and flanges, depending on the fabric. Like this fabric with the polka dots is very busy. So I decided to like quilt mine in black so that it didn't like glare out at me. And the little stripes is done in white. You can do them in any color you want. And I think it would be really nice to put it maybe in another color besides black, maybe a gray or something like that. But the polka dots are kind of busy. And I thought, well, I'm just going to do it in black because I like it. So it's not going to show up too much on this camera tonight. So I apologize. And so generally when I do these, I try to do them sort of, I like mine to be somewhat inclusive in the fabric so that it doesn't really stick out. Now, the Sweet Land of Liberty that we did this summer had plain fabric. The fabric was plain along the edges, and that looked really nice, I thought, with contrasting thread. But I think this was just really busy, so I'm going to do this with the black. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what I did for cutting and everything. So let me switch my camera here real quick. Hopefully everything's working okay. My camera was being wonky earlier, so we'll see if it's behaving itself now. Okay, can you still hear me all right? I think you can. Okay. All right, so let's start first and talk about the strips. So we talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago when we had our last class, that I don't trim my flanges or borders to the length that they call for. I like to trim them to the 1.5 inches width, but I like to leave it the width of the fabric. So in this case of this piece, all I had was a fat quarter. So these are 1.5 inch strips that are the width of the fat quarter, which is about 22. So these are my little borders, okay, the narrow ones. And I actually did go ahead and quilt a couple of them today, so I didn't have to do all of them for you tonight. Okay, so what I do normally when I quilt these is I like to quilt 2 at a time. Since these were in in the fat quarter, I'm going to do 2 sets of 2 when it comes to these. And you could do more if you wanted to do a wider hoop. You could do more if you wanted to. I usually figure about 2 is about all I can keep track of at once, so I usually do a couple at a time. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show you then is my flanges, which are the black and white polka dots. This I happen to have yardage. So these are actually the width of the fabric yardage, which is going to be 45. So these, I just left them in the 2, widths of fabric pieces. And then I'm going to quilt these together, the 2 of them together. And then I'm going to trim them down when I'm ready to put the pillow together next week. Okay, so that's normally the way I do this. I don't care for cutting them down to the size they set. Now, if you have already done that, that's okay. I will show you a trick to make sure that your borders and flanges fit your pillow, because there is kind of a trick that you can do that will make sure that it fits. As you quilt these, they do shrink up a hair. So you don't want to, if they shrink up too much, then they're going to be too short for your pillow. But I'll show you a couple tricks next week when we put it together, how you can compensate for that if your borders are your flanges and your borders are a little short. Okay. Now the other thing, when you do the borders and flanges, and I haven't shown you these instructions, but all of the borders, the quilting designs that we've been using and all the blocks all have their own instructions, and it has the instructions about how to do the borders. Okay, so make sure you print these off. Those come with the quilting designs, not with the the design set. So this is one of my books for my quilting designs. Okay. So we're going to use Borders Halloween 2 tonight. And there's all the different sizes here. And you can do them in both the clear blue tile method or the block by block. So so we're going to do block by block. And the other thing I don't do is I don't cut my batting for these either. So it gives you, you know, the chart over here, how wide you're supposed to cut your batting and all that. And I never cut my batting that at all. I just trim it in the hoop like I do all the others. Okay. Now, the other thing they tell you in here is to go ahead and put a like shape flex on the back of your fabric. That is fine if you want to do that, but you notice that I don't have it on my fabric. I usually don't for the borders and the flanges because particularly the flanges, I want them to be a little softer so they're not so stiff. Because, you know, when you put this together, let me get this back up here again. You know, when you put this together, we're going to stitch around between this border and the flange to make this little flange. Okay. And I don't want these to be so horribly stiff that they just like stand out like, you know, like really stiff. And they work better on the pillow, and I think they lay nicer. So I don't normally put the shape flex on them. It's really not necessary with the batting because the batting acts as a stabilizer. So I do not have shape flex on either these or the borders or the flanges tonight. Okay. And you can put it on if you prefer it and you want them to be stiffer, then by all means do that. But they will work perfectly fine without it. Now I do like it on the blocks of the pillow because I think then the main center of the pillow has a little more body to it, and so I do like the shape flex on those items. So that, but I've never put them on my borders or my flanges. I sometimes do when I'm doing a quilt, you know, if I know it's going to be hanging, because then I think your borders and your flanges have a little more strength to them if you're hanging the quilt up on the wall and it's like got weight on it. So those I usually do, but the pillows I haven't been. It's just, you know, one less thing to put on. And I think the flanges are softer, and then they don't stand out so straight on the pillow. So okay, that's my thoughts on it anyway. Okay, so give me a second. I'm going to open my door to let my breeze in here. The sun is very bright off to the west, so it's better that I don't that I don't have it glaring at you when I turn the camera on. So, okay. So what we got here then is and this is the one that they did in the instructions for the inner border and the outer border is they used Halloween 2. So that's the one I chose as well. And the little design, I don't know if you can see it very well here. You can kind of see it in the picture. It's like a little candy corn flower. Okay, for the small one. So that's the one we're going to do for the little border. So we're going to start with those. Now I want to show you a couple different hoops. Now I am going to do 2 of these at once. These are fat quarters, so you're only going to have to hoop these a couple of times in a 12-inch hoop. Okay. But I have a tendency when I do my borders, I like to use this old border hoop. And I've shown this to you before. It's kind of an expensive hoop. It's only 4 inches wide, but I love it because it has these little clamps right here, like this, that pop up, and they're really easy to get things in and out. And I personally like it because I don't waste so much stabilizer. So I can use a sheet of my pre-cut stabilizer on this side, and then I can cut it out when I get ready to do the second hooping, and then I can use the other half. So to me, it just saves on stabilizer because I don't have to hoop it. It doesn't hoop the same way. So it just clamps down on it. This is 4 by 12, roughly 4 by 12. It's not quite 4 inches. It's only going to be about 3.08 or so wide, but it is wide enough to put these 2 little borders in here. Okay, so let's start with the borders. So if you give me a second, I'm going to take this out so I can get my borders you know, I'm going to get an awful lot of glare. I think I am going to have to close my door. It's glarier than I thought. That air sure feels good though. I've got the fans running. I'll be fine. Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit less glary this way. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and go to my stick, and I'm going to get my border Halloween 2, and these little borders, the little narrow ones, are going to be, they're 1 inch. So you cut them 1.5, so they finish 1 inch. So we need to go into my Kimberbell Quilting, and I'm going to go to Borders Halloween 2 and my embroidery designs, and we're using the block by block method. Okay, so I'm going to get my PES file, and I'm going to use, so I'm using a 12-inch hoop. You, in any hoop, there's a 1x7, a 1x10, and a 1x12. So if you need to use a shorter hoop, you'll just have to hoop it more times. It's no big deal. And when you see how I hoop it, you'll be able to, you just have to hoop it a couple more times if your hoop's shorter. So I'm going to do the 1x12 because that one will fit in this hoop. And I'm going to set it. Now, I would like to do 2 of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit edit at this point, and I'm going to use the duplicate key, which looks like the 2 little squares right here. I'm going to hit duplicate. And then the second one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it to the center, and then I'm just going to slide it over a little bit so that there's a little space in between. But I got to watch my width here because this hoop is narrow. So I have to stay down maybe to about 3.8 or so wide. So it can't be too wide. Otherwise it'll say it's too big for the hoop because it's too wide. So I think that's good. It says it's 3.81, should be fine. So we'll hit OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit embroidery. And at this point, I'm going to hit layout on my machine, and I'm going to move it again to the center. So now it's centered in the hoop, and the 2 strips are the same height, and they're centered in my hoop. And you can see it's 3.8 by 11.75. So I know this will fit in this hoop. Okay. So that's why I didn't put the hoop on until I had arranged my little strips. Because when I put it on, it'll tell me if they're too big, if it's too big. And it didn't, so I assume it's okay. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to do, when Kimberbell created these designs, it's really cool. They make them all the same color for each step. So like all of the designs are the same colors for each step. So then I can choose in my machine. Not all of you are going to have this button. A lot of you will, depending on the machine you have. But this is the color sort button. It looks like 3 spools. 2 of them are blue and one's kind of white. So if you hit this button, and then I'm going to hit layout again. Now, if you look here, it has the first color, both of them are together. And then, so that's the placement line for the batting. And then both of the second colors are together. That would be the tack down line for the batting. So it won't stop in between and just do one side and then the other side. It'll do all of the steps together so that I don't have to, just do one side and then do the other side. Okay. So if you have that on your machine, you can use that function. Otherwise, you'll have to do one side and then the other side. Okay. Because not all of the machines have that button on them. So, okay. So I'm going to go ahead, bring you over here. Has anybody got any questions so far? Is this making sense? The borders and flanges are really easy to do. It just takes a little bit because you just gotta do them. So when we start working on this, all the instructions are in the border information here, and it gives you all the instructions on how to do this. It's very easy. We're going to start with the first hooping, and then I'll show you how I connect them together, and then we'll do the flanges too. So you'll have plenty of time seeing me rehoop. Okay. I don't cut my batting, so I just have my chunk of batting here. Okay. And I've got my white thread in because I'm going to use white thread for my, and I have bobbin thread in the bobbin. I have my white embroidery thread on top. And then I'm using no-show mesh stabilizer in the machine. So that's what we've been basically using for this whole project is no-show mesh. So I've got that in my hoop. Got a number 11 embroidery needle on in like I normally do. So that's kind of the normal stuff. So it's doing the first placement line for my batting. And then it's going to do the second one because I told it to color sort. So it's going to do both placement lines. So then I can go on and do the place my batting together and then trim it. So it's kind of neat. I love the color sort button. And for those of you with the newer machines, it's under layout on the embroidery screen. And it's the three spools, 2 are blue and one's kind of white. So, all right. So it's doing my placement lines. And I love this old hoop. I've had this hoop for a very long time. And I use it a lot for borders just because it's handy, but I can't do anything very big in it. It's just not very big. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cover up both of those lines then. Make sure I don't get my other half of my stabilizer in here. Okay. Covered them both up. And now I'm going to sew down. Step number 2 is always the tack down line for the batting. So all of these are the same order, but it's going to do both of the tack down lines since I told it to color sort. And I like to do these in strips because I think it does go a little bit faster, you know, with the color sorting and also with the strips, because then you don't have to do like one little strip and then another little strip. But I usually do longer strips so that I can trim my strips down in case, you know, my pillow turns out a different size. So I would tell you with any of these, when they tell you to cut the borders or the flanges or, you know, borders in a quilt a certain size, don't trim them down, leave them long, and then trim them when you're ready to sew it together, because then you're assured that they will fit fine. First time I ran into that was when we did the event, what was the home one, whatever it is, Home Sweet Home or whatever, what's it called? I can't remember what that was called. But anyway, that one is the first time that they told you to cut down the borders to the exact size, and I'm like, uh-oh. And I had some students that, you know, they came in the kit that way. And there was a few of them but I have a trick for that. So most of them, everybody got their pillows done and they were able to get their borders to work. So, all right, so it's going to go around it twice. And next week we're going to put this together. It's really fun to put together. There are a little bit of embellishments on this one. So we'll put it together and do the embellishments next week. All right. It's kind of fun to do Halloween. And then then the next, you know, for the month of October, we're going to do Thanksgiving. So I really like doing Thanksgiving stuff. And, you know, we kind of skip Thanksgiving. So I decided to do Thanksgiving. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and trim both of these together, if I can get my scissors to work. All right. I'm just going to trim close to the stitches. It doesn't have to be perfect because the fabric's going to cover this all up. So if it's not perfect, it is absolutely fine. I have a tendency to trim kind of fast, and I don't always do my batting very well. But okay, set that aside, and then I've got to get in between here. Let's get this other side first. It's a little hard to trim in this hoop because the little buckles get in the way. They're kind of tall, but I do love this old hoop, and they make a shorter one too. There's like a 7-inch one. It's about 4 by 7. And this next Wednesday, on Shields Live on the Shields Facebook page, we're going to talk about the hoop sizes, and we're going to talk about, you know, you can mark your hoop sizes. I'm going to explain which ones are which, and I'm going to talk about the sewing fields and everything. So hopefully that'll help you. I have a lot of questions about hoop sizes, because the hoop sizes are, you know, the physical size of the hoop is much larger than the actual sewing field. So people get very confused by that. So we're going to talk about that on Wednesday. I dug out all my hoops and got them all ready. And the only one, I only have one hoop that I don't own. I was hoping, I think Judy has one, so I think she's going to bring it for me. Okay, so there are our trimmed batting pieces. So then step number 3, or I'm sorry, step number 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3. This is step number 3 in the machine, is always going to be the placement line for the fabric. Oops, didn't get my flipper all the way down. There we go. So this is always the same. So this is going to be where we're going to put our fabric. Now I also have a little trick for the fabric that works much better for me. In the instructions, they talk about this rolling up of tape and all this. So I'll show you my little trick here. We're going to be using our sew line glue stick, because I tried it with the tape and my borders were wiggling, jiggling all over the place. So this tape, the tape or the glue works awesome. So that's how we're going to do this. So I'm getting my strips ready here. You guys are quiet tonight. How's it everybody doing? It was such a nice day. It is so nice and cool. It did rain a little bit last night. I think we got about a ½ an inch or so. Okay. I'm going to pull this back just a little bit, because I'm going to turn this and I'm going to show you how I'm going to put this in the hoop. So we're going to start, this is the top up here. So I'm going to turn this sideways for a minute. Okay. And we're going to put some glue up here at the top. Okay. So I'm just going to take my little glue stick and I'm going to put some glue up here. And I'm going to go up about a ½ an inch or so from the end. And so there's a little bit of a flap down in that glue. So I've got it about a ½ inch. I think in the instructions it tells you a half, but it's really not necessary. So I usually do about a ½ an inch. Okay, so I've got it stuck down right there. Okay, then let's do the other one. I like to do one at a time when I'm doing two, because I have a tendency to, my glue wants to dry on me. So I usually just do one at a time, get them both in, and then I start gluing them down. So about a ½ an inch up. Okay, and we're going to stick that down to the hoop like that. This is where they had you put the tape in the instructions. So I had a hard time with this because it wasn't working for me, because everything was wiggling and jiggling all over. Where did you buy that hoop? This is a Brother hoop. It's kind of expensive. The only way you can get it now, it was an old Quattro hoop. So it's been around a while, but you can still get it. It's about $400. So we're going to run the glue now down along between the batting and that placement line on both sides, all the way down. This is the problem that I had with the tape, is that there was nothing holding the edges of this fabric, and they were just going everywhere. Okay, so now I am taking the edge of my fabric and lining it up with the placement line, because it fits perfectly in there. And I'm running this down and I'm pushing it down into the glue. And it works great, because then it doesn't move around. I don't have to worry about it scooting when I'm sewing on it, because the tape just didn't work for me. Okay, so we're going to go all the way down, and I'm just pushing it down into the glue. Okay, like that. And let's do the other one. I just do one at a time. So I'm going to run this glue stick, and I like the sew line glue stick better, because it is narrow. It's, you know, small, has a small tip on it. It's a lot easier to get it in here. So then you don't have glue all over. So I'm just going to run it along between the batting and the placement line on both sides. Whoops, I missed. I always make a mess with glue. Very messy with glue. Okay, then we're going to run this one down. Do the same thing. I'm putting the edge of the fabric right on the line, the placement line, and then I'm just going to pat it down into the glue all the way down. Oh, Jackie, you're paying close attention. That's good. That's why you're so quiet. Okay. All right, so we're going to go all the way down to the end here. Okay. And like I said, at the top, I left about they said a half an inch, but I only left like a quarter of an inch. Okay. Got it all in there, nice and straight as I can get it anyway. Okay. I'm not a best cutter, so sometimes my strips are not super straight. Okay. And now the next step, which is step number 4 in the machine, is always going to be the tack down to the tack down for these strips. So we can still get this hoop, and we have it at the store at Shield Sewing Center. It's not on the website, but I can still get this hoop. And they still have, I think, the short one too. I like them. They're handy. I use it for the border function on the like on the luminaire also, just because it's easier to get it. It's not as wide, and it's easier to get stuff hooped in it because it clamps up and down. So I use this one. I like it. It's not very long. It's only 12 inches, but works well for me. Honestly, when I do the board, we're going to do the border function on Shields Live probably next week. The machines are going to the quilt show this week, so that's why I didn't do it this week. But I think I'll do it next week. And when we do the border, I'll probably use this hoop, so you can see it like when I'm using it in a different purpose. It especially works well if you don't have a lot of fabric. Why don't you use I do use the magnetic hoops, Jan. When I do the border hoop, I do. It just depends on how much fabric I have on the outside edge. This hoop is narrower, and so the border function can only do up to a 4-inch border. So this one actually is wide enough, and it's easier to do. I think to hoop with this one, and if I don't have very much fabric on the outside edge, so it just hoops easier. So okay, so now we've got it's all tacked down, it's not going anywhere, and now the 5th step is always the quilting. So then it's going to quilt. So yes, I do use the magnetic hoops if I'm using if I have enough fabric. But the one thing that disadvantage to this is it's so narrow that when I'm doing borders, if my border's a little askew, if I don't get a hoop straight, this hoop's too narrow. So I do use the magnetic ones also. But I don't have the magnetic brother hoops. I have the dime hoops. I use the dime snap hoops. And I usually use the 12-inch hoop, the 8x12, just because when you see me do the border function, when you put the numbers in, it generally is the same number of hoopings in an 8x12, a 9x14, and sometimes even the 10.5x16. So why use a bigger hoop if you don't need it? I like the smaller one. It's just easier to work with and handle. When this is done, remind me I need to put in a new needle. But yeah, so actually, to be quite honest, this is Judy's hoop. I owned the little one, but Judy had the long one, and she never used it, so I've been using it the last few years. So someday she'll want it back, probably. So I'm in possession of both of her old border hoops. Or no, I think the one's mine. No, I think they are both hers, actually. Because I think I let mine go with one of my machines that I shouldn't have. Okay, so there's the first one. It's going to go up and do the second one, and then they'll be all quilted. And again, I didn't put the shape flex on these, so. making sure I can see my comments. Sometimes I have trouble seeing. There we go. This is actually really fun. So this is the first hooping, and then we're going to connect it together so that it appears continuous at the end. Okay, so it's really easy to connect these. And this one we only have to hoop twice because they're the length, they're the width of my back border. So they're only about 20 or 22 inches. And then the black ones we'll have to hoop, I think, 4 times. But we don't have to do all of the hoopings tonight. I may only do a couple on the black borders, so you don't have to sit here and watch me do the same thing again. But I want you to be comfortable with it. No, my needle sounds funny. I need to put a new needle in. You can always tell your machine sounds different if your needle's not good. So pay attention to how your machine sounds. I hear this little popping sound every now and then, and it's the needle. And it probably doesn't look bent, but it could be just ever so slightly bent. I haven't hit anything, I don't think. Oh, and just a reminder to everybody, I was just sitting here thinking about it because I was looking over to make sure. When you are embroidering, make sure you unplug your foot controllers. Don't embroider with your foot controllers hooked up. Sometimes it freaks the machine out. So especially those multifunction ones, make sure they're unplugged when you're embroidering. I've been using the new multifunction one. I just got the upgrade. We finally got a few upgrades. So I did install one on my machine so I could, practice the new stuff. And the multifunction foot controller, I'm getting used to it. It's taking me a little bit. I'm not used to those kind of foot controllers. So, okay, so let's change the needle real quick so that it gets rid of that funny noise. I change my needles a lot. And, maybe I do a lot of needle changing. If it just doesn't sound right or something, I just change the needle because it usually takes care of most of that problem. Oh, there's another one in there. So I buy a lot of needles. I buy them by 100 at a time because I go through tons of needles. Okay, let's put this in flat side away from you, of course. Make sure it's all the way up. And the next thing I'm going to do is what, everybody, before I try to thread my machine? When you change a needle, especially if you broke one, needle down, needle up before you try to thread it again to make sure that you don't break your needle threader. Okay? Oops. Have to hit finished embroidery first before it'll let me thread. There you go. All right. Got a new needle. Make sure I don't stab myself with the old one there. All right. So now we've got our first hooping done. So now we need to do another one because we need more length. Okay, so I'm going to open these up. This is why I love this so much. See, it's got the little buttons here. Just hit the button, and it pops up on both sides, one on each end, and then it's ready to pull out. Okay, so now we're going to trim this out of the stabilizer. Now, I usually just use scissors for this. You can take this over to your cutting table and use a ruler and rotary cutter if you want. I just always have used scissors. Okay, now this piece of stabilizer is big enough to go back in my hoop, that other side. So we're just going to cut these out on both sides because we need to put them back in the hoop again. And I think it's faster just to cut with the scissors than it is with the rotary cutter. So, and I have less chance of cutting myself with scissors. All right, so we're going to cut those off. And then down here at the bottom, we want to get rid of this little flap down here too. So I'm just going to pull this back, and you can see where the batting is. I'm just going to trim the stabilizer right up to the batting. Okay, like that, and get rid of that little piece. And we'll do the other side. Oh my gosh, we're going to have all of these pieces done. After I get the borders done, we'll be ready to put it together. It's so much fun to put together. This was a really fun pillow. One of my favorites, I think. I did really enjoy Gather Together. it was, I had, like I said, I ran into a little problem that I wasn't expecting, but you know, if that happens, then I can show you how to fix it. So if it happens in the video that I'm going to make again, then I can show you how I fixed it. And you can't tell that there was a problem. Okay, so I'm going to flip the little tail back. Don't cut your tails off. And we're going to trim the stabilizer, but not the fabric. Okay, get rid of that little piece. There we go. So you got those trimmed up there, and I just kind of trimmed across the top up here. Okay. All right, so now we're ready for our second hooping. That will take care of these strips since they weren't as long. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slide my batting back in here, or my stabilizer back in here. And that's why I use this quite a bit when I'm doing little stuff, because it does save on stabilizer. Okay, put that, and then put this one down. Got my stabilizer in there. Okay. All right, so I'm going to put this back in the machine, and we're going to use the same design that we already used. Okay. So again, the first step is going to be the placement line for the batting. So we have to do that first. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew out step number 1. And of course, this one's color sorted, so it's going to do both of them. Okay. So I've got my pieces ready. I'll drop my scissors here. So then you just kind of, once you kind of get in the groove of doing these, they go actually pretty quick, especially if you can do a couple at a time. So these the way I would have done them, if I could have, if I had yardage, I would have cut, you know, the 2 widths of fabric and then just done them in one piece, but I couldn't do that with these. So I was cutting out of scraps for this pillow, so I was using up pieces I had, and I had a fat quarter of this. All right, doing our placement lines. Now we got to get our little chunk of batting here so we can cover up both of the placement lines. I have a lot of hoops. Brother actually makes a lot of hoops, and I have most of the hoops. The only ones I don't have are the magnetic ones, because I think I have every other hoop they make. So now I'll put my batting down, and now we're going to do the batting tack down line, which is step number 2. Okay. So I think the only hoops that I don't have are the magnetic ones. They make several now, and then there's a new one that came out for the Luminaire. So there's like a 10 by 10 now, and then there's the magnetic one that's like a 7 by 14, I think. And then they made a nice little 5 by 7 one, which is kind of cool. But I already had all the dime snap hoops, so that's why I haven't purchased the other ones. I already have a whole set of magnetic hoops. In fact, I think I have them all. So, and I do really like them. But I like to use all the hoops I have. So like, depending on what I'm doing, like this one comes in real handy when you're doing this kind of stuff. And it works really well for the borders with the border function on quilts. So I actually use this one quite a bit, even though it's not very big. You know, it's not very wide. All right, so we're getting the other side. And I just like to kind of smooth my batting down. Sometimes I get a pucker if I don't, so. All right. So we're going to be done with these little borders already right after this hooping. And then we'll go on to the flanges. Goes around twice. How do you keep the magnetic hoop from pinching your fingers? Okay, so when you use your magnetic hoops, Cindy, you need to stand it up, like put it. I always have the base in the machine, and then I kind of stand the hoop up and I let it drop, or I put it in and I let it drop, and I let go of my hand with my hands and let it drop. If you're doing it before you put it in the machine, kind of stand it up on edge and let it drop down and get your hands out of the way. So yes, and they're very tight. So it hurts when you get your fingers pinched. I have done it, yes. Okay, so now we're going to trim our batting. I usually am using the hoop though with the base in the machine, so often I'm quilting or something. And when we get ready to quilt the gather together pillow, we will quilt that with we're going to quilt it with the clear blue tiles and with a magnetic hoop, because I'll quilt it with a magnetic hoop. So I'll show you what I do. I like the magnetic hoops for quilting because then I don't have to take the quilt or whatever I'm quilting out of the machine. I just can flip the top off the hoop and slide wherever it is, and wherever I'm going, and then slide it down and put the top back on. So it works really slick. And the Brother ones have more pieces on the top, so I think they might be a little bit stronger magnets, but they have multiple magnets, not just one. So like, the dime ones have one great big loop that's magnetic on the top. And so you can just pull the whole thing off in one swoop, move your quilt, and flip it back down. Well, with the Brother one, you have to remove multiple pieces. And the easiest way to slide them then is to leave a couple of the magnets on. So, and then just remove part of them. So they're just different. So, whoops, second here. Looks like I unthreaded my needle. All right. So now we need a placement line to know where to put our fabric. So that's step number 3. So we'll put that on, and we're going to, oops. And we're going to do our placement line. So we know where to put these down. Yep, it really does hurt if you get your fingers in there, though. I've had lots of bruises under my fingernails and stuff from them. Just got to be careful. The bigger one, the ones that's really bad that I get myself with, believe it or not, is the 5x7, because it's small and I think it's pretty strong, and it's real small and it like goes down real quick. And I get myself with that one. Okay, we're getting our placement lines. So the difference between the first hooping and the second hooping, the first hooping we just kind of left a little flap. Yes, that is true, Jan. So the magnetic hoops that Brother has have very strong magnets in it. And the dime hoops do not have this. They're strong magnets, but they're not as strong. But the Brother hoops have a warning. If you have a pacemaker, that you should not be using that hoop because the magnets are quite strong. So be aware of that if you have a pacemaker. Okay. All right. So with the first hooping, we just kind of put about 1/4 of an inch above the batting here. But this time we're going to go down to the end. We're going to turn this back, the little tail, and we're going to expose the end of that batting that we cut off. Okay. And this time we're going to take our glue stick along the top, and I've got my little tail pulled back, and I'm going to butt those 2 pieces of batting right up to each other, keeping the fabric within my placement lines like that. Okay, so I've got the 2 pieces of batting butted right up together. Okay, and then I'm going to run my glue stick, down between the batting and the placement line. And now this one's going to be a little bit of a short hooping because it doesn't need to have another whole 12 inches. So I'm going to push this down within the placement line like that. Get it all down. And so there's going to be a little bit of batting poking out at the bottom. Okay, so the way this works is, the bottom needs to be taped because you want to make sure that so I've got some Kimberbell paper tape here, and I'm going to tape across the bottom of that open area and really push the tape down, because the foot can still get under that tape. Ask me how I know, because I did it today even. Thought I had it pushed down hard enough, and the tape just went right underneath, or the foot just went right underneath that tape. Okay, so I got the first one in. So let's do the same thing over here. I'm going to put my glue down first, and I like to do these by, individually, so my glue doesn't dry. I'm going to flip this back to where the batting is. Okay. But yes, the brother hoops do have a warning about if you have a pacemaker. I do not think the dime ones do. I think I went and looked, and they do not, because they must not be as strong. So I'm going to push that down. I'm keeping it even between the placement lines there. And then I'm going to run my glue down between the batting and the placement line. But these are the Soline glue pens. They're up on our website too. And I've got the glue inserts if you need those. But this works better than a regular Dritz glue stick because it's narrower. Okay, get these pushed down. Whoops, second here. Slide it around. Whoop. Good job, Jan. I just pulled it right out. There we go. I think I got it back down. Okay, let's get this side. Push down, and then I'm going to get a little piece of tape and tape down the end. Okay, we're going to go over the open end and really give it a good push, because the foot can still take the tape up. I'm not a big fan of tape when it comes to the edgings and stuff. So when we go to do the bench pillow, when we do the edge-to-edge quilting on it, I will show you what I'm going to do, what I've learned to do now, and to keep from having to have problems with the edges. Okay, oops, got to get it in there. Come on, there it goes. All right. Okay, so then the next step is going to be the tack down lines for our strips. It's going to do both of them together. Make sure your strips aren't underneath your hoop back here, because you got them sticking out the back now. Tack them down so they won't move around. Usually they do pretty well, but when I get problems with the tape is when the foot is moving this direction, and at the bottom of this pattern, the foot moves this direction, just so you know. That's why you really want your tape stuck down well. The tape's great and everything, but it doesn't always solve the problem. Because those feet just go right underneath. All right. Getting this one done. And it is going to go all the way to the end, where the batting is, because it's a little longer, but we're just going to have a little extra at the bottom. And I usually just let them sew. You could stop them if you want to. I just let them sew, because there's just a little bit at the end. So, oh, didn't catch the bobbin thread. I think it did up here though. It should be okay. All right, so then the final step is going to be the quilting. So then we'll quilt these two. And it looks like I did pretty well getting them lined up, because they lined up the little tack down lines lined up pretty well. So you can always tell if you get them lined up pretty well. So yeah, I actually had a gal that has a pacemaker bring a hoop back, because she hadn't read the little blurb on the back of the brother hoop that said if you have a pacemaker not to use that hoop. So I went and looked up a bunch of the stuff about the dime hoops, and I had never found anything that they had a warning on it. So I don't think they're as strong. If anybody's ever seen that, let me know. Okay, what's it going? Now this is where I get a little nervous. I kind of watch down here to see how things are going, because this is where it wants to grab, is down here. When it gets down to the bottom here. I wish it would go the other way, but it doesn't. And I run my machine usually around 700-800. I'm guessing mine's at 800 right now. So, okay, so this is where it grabbed. Let's see, it's going to be okay this time. It went right over it. But really push that tape down well onto the fabric, because it will grab underneath there. So, all right. And I could stop it now, but I'll just let it go. It's got one more little flower. I haven't either, Jan. So I think I went and looked when we had that customer tell us that, and I think I went and looked to make sure. So, and there was no information about that, but there was on the Brother one. But it has very different types of magnets. They're very large, and then you even get a tool, that has like a lever. It's like a lever. You have to push it underneath to flip them off because they're so tight. So, but there are multiple pieces. All of them have at least 4, if not 6, magnets on them. But I've never really had too much trouble with the dime hoops. The only one that I have ever had a little trouble with is the 8x8. If I have anything very thick in it, but I quilt in those quite often, and I really don't have any trouble with them. But I don't have as much trouble with like the 9x9, the 9.5 by 9.5. So I choose that one sometimes instead of the 8x8 for that reason. But I use them all. And the only great big hoop, the 10.5 by 16, that's for this luminaire. That's the only one I use, because I just don't care for the Brother hoop at all. And so I never use that hoop. I use the magnet hoop when I need that great big one, which is not very often. All right, so here comes that tape again. I'm going to watch it in case I need to stop the machine. And then we got our little borders all quilted. So you do the other 2, because this one had 4 since they were a back border. So I already did the other 2. All right. And then we'll trim these out too. All right. All done. So I got all 4 of my narrow borders done. Yay. All right, so let's pop this up. Trim these up. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with these. I usually just leave the tape on for the time being, because these borders are going to be trimmed down. So I'll just leave the tape on there and I'll trim them off. So I'll just trim this along here, take it out with my scissors. I'm just going to trim across the bottom of the fabric here. And I'll just leave that little bit of tape there. It's fine. And I'll just trim it off later when I go to trim these down. I thought these were cute. And you could very well do any kind of color here, if you didn't want white. I just have a tendency when I quilt. So then when we get to the center here, we want to do the same thing. We want to get rid of this. Don't cut through your fabric. Just flip it over so you can just cut through the batting or through the stabilizer. All right, get this one out. And then let's move on to the bigger one. So you can see that one. That one turned out really cool too. All right, get this one up. Yeah, I do better with scissors than I do with the rotary cutter, so I usually use scissors for these. I'm going to flip this down. Just to be careful, don't cut your fabric. I'm just going to cut across. And down the other side. And I'm just kind of cutting right on the little placement line now that it's sewed down on the edge of my fabric and across the bottom. There we go. So there is, whoops, I just dropped it. Went flying right on my hand. So there's the other 2. Okay, so we got 2, and here's the other 2, so I've got 4. So here's all my borders for my narrow borders for my pillow. And they're all done in the white. You can see a really nice, I love this batting too, because you can see it gives it nice little texture, and you get real definition. And even though it's white on the white, you can actually really see it on the pillow, because you can see the little, the indentation of the stitches. Okay. All right. So there's the narrow borders. So let's do the wider ones. So now I'm going to have to switch hoops here, because this one's going to be too narrow for those. I could do one at a time in this hoop. So sometimes when I'm here and I have time, I just use this hoop and do one border at a time. But I wanted to do 2 at a time tonight. So I'm going to grab my 8x12 hoop. This is the 8x12 hoop. So I've got it hooped up again with my no-show mesh stabilizer. And got some other pieces of stabilizer. Now this one we're going to have to hoop 4 times, because I had my borders cut the widths of the fabric. So there actually was yardage. So it's 45 inches long. And that will cut all 4 of my flanges. And this one I'm going to do in the black. So I'm just going to switch my color to black. And I'm sorry you can't see them as well, but I like the matching quilting. So all right, so now let's go over here and get our other design. Now the other design is also in the Border Halloween 2. Hello. Oh, people still coming in. Hello, everybody. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm just going to hit the little house button up here. And I'm going to do the same thing with this. So these are going to be 2.5-inch borders, I believe. Check here. Yes, 2.5-inch ones. So they're going to finish 2 inches. All right, so we're going to choose the 2-inch one. So I'm going to go to my embroidery again and my stick. And these are in my Kimberbell quilting, and it's going to be Border Halloween 2 and block by block and PES. And then I'm going to go to the 2-inch ones, and this is a 12-inch hoop. So I'm going to do 2x12 because they're going to finish 2 inches, 2x12. And these also have the little candy corns on them. Now, I wonder if I used a different one on this one. I must have. Oh, I did. I think I used border 1 on this one. That's okay. We're going to use border 2. It says to use border 2. Pillow flange, border Halloween 2, 2-inch. But you know what? This one has the little, can you see the little flowers? Because mine actually has spider webs on it. So let's see. Those are the 3-inch ones. Let's see. Do they have multiple ones on here? Let us look. Because mine has spider webs on it. I might have used the first one. Let's see. Yeah, that one still has, I don't know if I like that or not. I would like to use, my other one has spider webs on it, I think. I must have used number 1 on this one, but they have number 2. So, we'll just do this one, then they'll be different. All right, but we do need a 2-inch one. So it finishes 2x12. So we're going to do that one. And so it's just going to have the little candy corns on it, and that's fine. Because when you get up here, I don't know if you can see real well on the screen, but when you get up to the bigger ones, see, they have more stuff on them. The wider borders here, like the 4-inch ones have spider webs and different things on it. Okay. And I think I got into the right one. Make sure I got into 2. Let's go back and check to make sure I got in the right folder. Keep going. Back a couple more times. Border Halloween 2. I wonder if I used the first one on the other one. Could have. All right, well, we'll use this one. Yep, so we need 1-inch, 2-inch by 10, 2-inch by 12. Okay, we'll use the 12-inch one. All right. So And we cut the borders. I'm just checking my measurement again just to make sure. Yeah, 2.5 by the width of the fabric. Okay. All right, so I've got my black thread in there. Now, again, I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Okay. I'm going to do edit here. I've got the first one in here. I'm going to do edit. I'm going to do duplicate. Okay. And then I want to move it to the center, because if I center it, then I can slide it directly over to the right or the left. Okay. And keep them even. Okay. And I do need to have a little space in the middle here to make sure that there's a little room for the fabric to sit in there. Okay. So I just make sure there's a little bit. And now this one, I don't have to worry so much because I've got plenty of room in my 8-inch hoop. Okay. All right. So I'm going to hit okay. Then I'm going to hit embroidery. A second here. It's mad at me because it says it's too wide. But if I hit embroidery, if you leave your hoop out, then you can do layout, move, and then center them. And now they're plenty small enough. It's 6.52 inches wide. So there's plenty of room. And I'm going to hit my color sort button under layout also, because then it will do all of the placement lines, all of the tack down lines, and so on. Okay. So yeah, if you leave your hoop out, I had stuck my hoop and I didn't realize I had. So if you leave your hoop out while you're doing the moving and then the centering, you won't have the problem with it telling you the hoop's too big or too small, I should say. Okay. So now we're going to work on these. Let's get these done. I've got my black thread in there. And the first thing we're going to do these exactly the same way, but these we're going to have to hoop 4 times. So I'll probably do 2 hoopings and then I'll finish them later, so you don't have to watch me keep hooping these and doing the same thing. Okay, but we'll do 2 hoopings. So we're going to do our placement lines. I'm going to get my chunk of batting ready here. And these are going to turn out to be 2 inches wide finished. But I don't have any shape flex in the back of these either, because especially the flanges, they just seem like they're so stiff if you put the shape flex on them. I do on the borders of the quilts because of the weight of the quilt hanging on it, because it really helps with that, but I usually don't with these. All right. Getting our placement lines. I think I've got a big enough chunk here to do this one. But I like to leave a little space in the center so that there's a little room for my... But you can see I'm not going to be able to use the other half of this batting or this stabilizer. So that's why I like the other hoop, because I can actually utilize the stabilizer a little better. Just when you have to have it wide enough to go in the hoop. So... I got to take this hoop with me to the store when I do the Shields Live on Wednesday, but I had to use it first. Now, some of the hoops are actually marked. So this one is marked, and I didn't think the 8x12s were marked, 8x12, but this one is, and this one must have been the last one I got with my newer machine. Okay, so we got our batting. It was big enough. And then we're going to do step number 2, which is going to be the tack down line for the batting. I use an 8x12 hoop a lot instead of the bigger ones, just because it's very easy size to handle, and a lot of the stuff I do is actually that's plenty big enough. I do have to go up to a 9.5 by 14, but when I got this machine, I actually purchased a 9.5 by 14 because it didn't come with one, and that new big hoop is so massive and so big, I didn't like using it. So I bought a 9.5 by 14 again. It's very handy. But yeah, down here, so we'll talk about this on Wednesday. Down here, this hoop is marked 200 by 300 millimeters, 8x12. And a lot of the older hoops were not marked, so I must have this one must be marked. I didn't think all my 8x12s were. So I wonder if this is the last one I got with my 5200. My last sewing machine I got had a 8x12 as the largest hoop. Hi, Anna. People are still coming in. All right, so we're going to get this one ready to go here. So we'll do a couple of hoopings on these, and then you would do 2 more. So this one would have 4 hoopings since it was my widths of fabric. If you had cut them down, you'd only need to do 2 hoopings. And sometimes I choose the length, depending on, you know, like the length of my fabric. Sometimes I choose the length of the design that's kind of even, so that I don't have like a big, you know, like the second hooping is not like, it's mostly batting. So sometimes I'll do that too. I kind of do a little math in my head and pick one that's more evenly divisible. But the 12-inch ones are great. Okay, so now we're going to trim this one. Trim close to the batting. Even if you had cut your batting down to the sizes they say, you would still have to trim it because it is bigger than 2.5. I mean 2 inches, I should say. So you'd still have to trim it. So I figure, why spend all that time cutting batting when I can just trim it in the hoop out of my bigger pieces? I'm lazy, I guess. Or I do a lot of embroidery, one or the other. All right, got that. Whoops, second here. I didn't get a very good job on that. The side. It's hard to trim. I try not to take it out of the machine too much, because then you can kind of see what I'm doing. But these work great. This is a great method. And when I figured out the glue trick with the, because I had trouble with my first set of borders I did with the tape, it worked really well for me. And you can do these pretty quick. So I'll finish up these borders later tonight, so you don't have to sit here and watch me do all of these hoopings. Okay, so we got them all trimmed. So now, of course, the step number 3 is always the placement line for the fabric. So we'll do that. It's amazing how much sooner it gets dark, isn't it? I could actually open my door now because the sun's gone down behind the houses enough so that it would be so glary. It's very glary. All right. So we're going to do the same thing with these that we did with the first ones. We're going to start about 1/4 inch from the edge and glue it down. Yeah, so I must have used the Halloween one on this one because it's a different one, but that's fine, doesn't matter. I think I used the little candy corns on the little narrow one, but I must have chosen a different one when I did the bigger one, because it still says here, it says Halloween too. Doesn't matter, they're still cute. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to see if I can turn this a little bit. These bigger hoops are harder to see. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put the glue across the top. Okay, and I'm going to go up about 1/4 inch or so, you know, from the end, and leave just a little bit of a flap up there, so about 1/4 inch. And I'm going to line it up between the marks, between my placement lines, okay? And then I'm going to take my glue and come down between the batting and the placement line all the way to the bottom on both sides. Get this one flipped up a little bit. So the only thing that's different with these is it's wider and my particular fabrics are longer. And again, I did not put the shape flex on, so I'm just going to slip this down. And you can if you want to. It's kind of hard to cut those narrow pieces of shape flex because, you know, it's kind of narrow anyway, and so you kind of have to cut it, and then it makes it, I don't know, just makes it hard. especially when they're 45 inches long. So these I don't mind, but I do cut them on the, I do put it on the quilt borders. And if I do it this way. Okay. Get those all pushed down, and then let's do the other one. Oops. Did I get the wrong end? Hold it right back up again. There we go. All right, so let's do this end. Looks like people have been finding each other from, they didn't know that there's people from Tennessee here. All right, whoops, got to find the other end here. Okay, so I'm going to go up about 1/4 of an inch or so. I haven't been to Tennessee for a long time. I've been there several times. All right, and then flip this back. Whoop. See if I can get it back on there. Whoops. There we go. And put our glue down the sides. I am very messy with the glue. Messy with the glue. Down each side. All right. Put that right between those placement lines. See if we can get it straight. Pretty good. Yeah, it's funny because some of the narrower borders are like one pattern, and then the wider ones are a different pattern. But this one was still considered a narrow border, I guess. So it's still the same one. So we're going to have the same one on the inside and the outside. Doesn't matter at all. Okay. Get those on there, and then I'm going to put this back in the machine, and then we're going to do step number 4, which would be the tack down lines for our borders. And I just kind of watch these so that, you know, something doesn't catch or anything. And you've got your tails down here, like on your lap. And just be careful when you go to trim that you don't cut the little tails of fabric off, because we need those. Goes back this way. All right, so there's the first one. Then it's going to go over and do the second one. Yeah, I didn't write everything down when I did my first one of these, and like I said, it's been a little while since I did it. I think I did it maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, and I didn't write. Evidently, I didn't write which border I used, so I didn't use the one they told me to. I must have used a different one. Oh well. But I was trying to make it so you guys wouldn't have to buy so many quilting designs, because, you know, there were so many in this, and I think they used the kit that was for the quilt, the candy corn quilt one, and so there was a whole gobble of them in there. So I think they used the same ones for that, but you know, you don't need that many for this. Then the final step will be our quilting. So we're going to quilt this one, and I'm going to leave my black in. And you could do this in a different color. I think you're going to still see the indentations of the quilting quite well. I love Hobbs batting because it's just a little loftier, and I think you can see the quilting a little better on things. Then the project batting is so soft and so flat that I don't think you see the quilting as much. So you can just use a good quality, either cotton or cotton blend batting. But I have a tendency to use the Hobbs because it just has a little more loft to it. All right, so we're on the second little, so this one's going to be the same as the other one, but it's a lot wider. Pretty cool. You can really see the candy corns in this one. They had a bunch of different borders for the Halloween. I think there may be 4 of them now. Where do you get your batting? My batting, I usually get my batting from Hobby Lobby, actually. You can buy it by the package there. And they have Hobbs 80/20 is what it is. And they also have it at Joann's by the yard. I don't think they have packages there, but they do have yardage there. You can buy it. And I've been buying it, you know, I've been buying it in the packages because I use so often. I just use chunks, you know, smaller pieces. But either place, they usually have it. Both of them do. Okay, we're getting close to the first one being done. And we'll do one more hooping, and then we'll be, I think everybody will be on their way to their borders and flanges. And probably what I'll do is I'll just re-hoop it so you can see the procedure again. Oh, you were in Joann's yesterday? Yeah, they do have it by the yard because it's usually back with the batting on a roll. And you can buy the whole roll if you want to. I just wait. Sometimes I do, and if you wait until they go on sale, I just buy the whole roll. Because I also have a long arm, so I use it on my long arm. Except my long arm lives in Coralville, and I live in Anamosa. So I haven't been able to use it much. All right. Get the second one done. These are going to be cute. I actually really like the candy corns. I probably should have done that on the other one. I think this one looks like it has little spiders and maybe a witch on it. I don't think it's the spider webs. I don't know which one I used on this one. It has spider webs and swirls. I don't know which one I used on this one. Because I had all four of them, so who knows? I must have just picked one. You probably can't see it but too well, but I can really see the form of the candy corns and stuff. They're little flowers. When I do these classes, I should do a different color so you can see it, but I you know, this is for Judy, so I want to make sure it looks the way she wants it when it's done. So she loves Halloween, so I'm gonna make this one for her. She couldn't find her kit. I don't know if she's ever found it or not. She had a kit for this, and she bought a kit, but I don't know if she's ever found it. And mine actually, I cut out of scraps. I have a lot of Kimberbell scraps now. In fact, I pulled the scraps so I could cut. I need to cut Candy Cane Lane again. So I was pulling out the scraps to cut Candy Cane Lane. Again, that we'll do in November. That one's really fun. So I got the fabric kind of pulled together for that. Okay. And there we are done with the first hooping. So let me re-hoop it again. Okay. So you know what to do. We'll just do it one more time. And then we'll be ready to continue on to finish up the flanges. A second here, I'm going to grab my other piece of stabilizer. I love pre-cut stabilizer because I go through a lot of stabilizer. So I've got a pre-cut. Oh, looks like maybe I better change my bobbin. Otherwise, I'll probably run out right in the middle. I think this one's got enough on it. I'll put this one back in. All right. Put some stabilizer in here. So you can see this one, you know, I have to go through more stabilizer. Okay. It's down here. Whoops. I can get the end in. It's hard when you're sitting down and the hoop is so far away. There we go. Now I have my hoops pretty tight, so. And I do like, the only time I ever pull is when I want my stabilizer to be pretty taut in there so it doesn't flop around on me. Okay. All right, so let's trim this out. And then we'll hoop it one more time so you can see it one more time. And then these will be done. You'll have to hoop these probably, you know, if you have a with the fabric like I do, you'll have to hoop them 4 times. The last hooping will be fairly short. So, and it works really great this way. I like doing a couple of them at a time, and you could do more. You know, if you wanted to put it in your great big hoop, you could do like 3 or 4 borders at once if you wanted to. When that great big hoop, I just don't like to use the great big hoop. 8x12 is kind of my favorite hoop, so I use that one quite a bit. It's easier for me just to kind of keep track of what I'm doing, I think. If I get too much going on, then I'm more apt to make mistakes. All right, so I'm going to flip the backing. I got to flip my tail back so I can trim along the bottom of the batting. Don't trim your fabric. We need that fabric, so I'm going to trim right along the end of the batting there. There's one. And got to get the other one out of here. This one done. I still got to order my groceries tonight. I haven't done that yet. All right, get that across the top. This is the top. Oops, my scissors are getting dull. To get some new ones. See if I can get these sharpened. It's so hard to get scissors sharpened. All right. These are really old scissors. I've had these forever. All right, so I'm going to flip the tail back. Don't cut your fabric. Across the bottom. Okay. There we go. So there's our first hooping on the flanges. And I'm going to go ahead, got this all hooped back up again with my no-show mesh. Set those aside for a minute, and we're going to do the placement line. Off it goes. You don't have to even change the design or anything. Second here, I'm going to just get rid of the finished embroidering error message. All right. And try to remember to change your bobbins because, I have done that many times, and you get right in the middle, and then you forget, and you run out of bobbin thread. Because, I hate to take it out of the hoop, take everything out of the machine and everything, and I don't look. All right. Another placement line for our batting. So we're going to have to get another chunk of batting here. I've got one big enough loop. Big enough here. When I found out that I didn't have to cut the batting, I could just use chunks. It worked very well. So it saves a lot of time not having to cut all those batting pieces. One more hooping here, and then I'll do the other two after I do my groceries. The one that I just took out. Who asked about the bobbin? Anna. The one I just took out is a pre-wound, so you just throw those away. And it was nearly empty. I mean, there was just a little teeny bit left on it. I just threw it away. But I use pre-wounds most of the time. All right, so we're going to get that over the placement lines, get it smoothed out, and step number 2 is to tack down the batting. Yeah, it's a beautiful evening. Looks a little bit rainy, though, off kind of to the north. I don't know if we're supposed to get more rain tonight or not. I didn't hear. So if you're winding your own bobbins, yes, I would. I just take what little bit is off, left on the bobbin, and just throw it away, and then you can wind another one. I don't wind my bobbins, Anna. I like to use pre-wounds. I embroider too much, so I have lots of bobbins that are already wound for me. I have a whole box here, plus another whole box in my inside here. So I better get another one out because I'll need one pretty soon. We are? Okay. Oh, thanks, Deb. Did you try to call yesterday, Deb? I was on the phone. You didn't leave a message, so I'll get with you next week. I thought I saw your name come across. Sometimes the caller ID doesn't come across very well when you're on the phone. So I thought I saw it with your name. All right. The phone rang a lot on Saturday. Sometimes the phone is just dead as can be, but not Saturday. It was very busy. I don't think anybody wanted to come to Iowa City because it was the Iowa State game, and nobody wanted to come to Iowa City with all the people. So actually, it wasn't as bad as I thought it might be, because I live on the opposite end of the town where I must have gotten some extra batting in there. My batting flipped over on underneath the hoop. Oh, actually, I didn't even sew it in. Look at there. Okay, so we're going to trim these. Trim close to the stitches. Yeah, so I was worried that I was going to get stuck in some traffic, but because we get off work at, I think the game was at 3, and I got off work at 2, so I thought, oh, golly, there's going to be a lot of traffic, but it wasn't bad. But there were a lot of people at the game, I guess. The joys of living in a university town. All right, I'm going to get this one. Hopefully you can see me trimming. We've been doing this, so I think you know this part. All right. Just about done. I think I need to get this little piece up here yet. Nope, I got it. Okay. So there's those. And now we're going to put this in one last time so you can see it one more time, and then we will be done. And I'll just keep going so that you do the same procedure. So now, again, we're going to take this and we're going to flip it back so that you can see the batting right there. And here's the tail. That's going to go down. I'm going to put my glue across the top here. We're going to butt the batting. Whoops, guess what? I always forget to do this. You guys are supposed to be watching me. We need the placement line. You got to watch me. This is the part that I forget. Tried living, and an NFL football team. Well, that we'll never have to worry about having NFL football teams here in Iowa. But yeah, I imagine that's terrible. To have all of them, yeah. You got to watch me because I forget to put my placement line for my fabric down. And I get ready to glue, and then I thought, oh, I don't have any lines to go by. What glue stick do you use most? This, I use 2 different ones, and this is the Soline glue stick. So this is the little narrower one. This works better for this because I have a narrower space to work with. And the other one I use is, and these are all up on our website. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. I use the fabric, the Dritz fabric glue stick. And I use this one a lot too if I have a bigger area to work with. So those are the 2 I use. And they don't gum your needle up and they don't cause you all kinds of problems. So I've been using these for years and years. All right, so let's try this again, shall we? All right. Oops, I just lost my glue stick. So I'm going to glue this down between my lines. And it helps if you have them there. Okay. Oops, I think I'm going to have to re-glue again. It dried enough. It's not going to stick. Go across there again. There we go. So I got my fabric pushed back, and I'm going to try to get the batting as close as I can. Okay. And then I'm going to push this back, and then I'm going to run my glue stick down between the batting and the placement line. I was so proud of myself tonight. I hadn't done that yet. And, I had to do it for the last hooping. Oh, well. You guys got to watch me. All right, so we're going to go down this way, and I'm going to put my fabric down between the lines. Make sure it's stuck down well up here, too. But the glue, once I figured out the glue trick, this works really slick, because then things don't move around on you, and it's so much easier than the tape. I've always struggled with tape because it doesn't, like, when you put it on the back of the hoop, sometimes you have to use tape. And I don't like to use tape on the back of my hoop because it has a tendency to pull off when the hoop is moving around, and then things slide. So I like to use glue stick on the back of the hoops if I can, but there's times when I have to use tape. Okay, so we'll get the other one in here and do the same thing. Up here, put my line of glue across the top. I'm going to fold this back to the batting, and the tail's going to be going down. So get this pulled back so you can see where the end of your batting is, and get it lined up with the other edge. Push it down well. And then I'm going to run my glue stick down there between the batting and the placement line, all the way down. So this one is going to have to be hooped a couple more times. So I'll do it later. And then these I will trim down when we go to put it together next week, because I like to just measure my borders and stuff, so like I do on a quilt. Okay, so I think I'm a little off over here. There we go. Get it pushed down in between the placement line. Second here. Whoops, I'm stuck on my needle. There we go. Push it down into the glue all the way down. And then we'll be ready for the tack down line and the quilting. So does everybody feel confident that they can do their borders and their flanges? These are really fun to do. They're not hard, and they take a little time because you have to hoop it a few times, But each one would be 4 times. So, the borders would be 4 times and the flanges 4 times if you're doing a couple at a time. You cut them right up to the fabric. Yes, so I cut them right up to the fabric, Anna. You cut the stabilizer close to the stitch line on the side. So I cut it next to the placement line. So it's at the edge of the fabric, see? Okay. All right, so there's the first one. And you do that each time you unhoop it. You just do the trimming. And then when we do gather together, the braid is kind of done like this as well. The way they did the braid is all in one piece. You actually do 60 inches of braid. So we won't do the whole 60 inches in class. I'll do, a few hoopings to show you how to do the hooping. And with that one, they're older designs. So you actually use a thumbtack to help you line it up. So it was kind of neat how they did it. Oops, looks like I unthreaded here. A second. Get this one. Back up a little bit so we'll catch it. There we go. Now it's happier. All right. I'll go back, and then I'll start the quilting. And again, here's your little ends. They're down here and kind of like towards your lap. All right. And obviously Jan did not do the greatest job cutting that, because can you see how uneven my borders are? I'm not the greatest cutter. Okay. So these are going to go, and we can say goodnight. And next week, second here, let me find the right camera setting I need to be on. And change my microphone. Okay, so does everybody feel confident that they can do their They're flanges and borders, and you just keep going. You do all the hoopings, and like I'll have 2 more hoopings on this, and then those will be done, and then we'll trim them down next week when we put the pillow together. So we're going to put the rest of it together, put the back on. It'll be so cool. So that'll be fun. We'll put a little the few embellishments. There are a few embellishments in this one. So and then so that'll be next week. And then the last week in September, we're going to start working on Gather Together. But we're going to be working on the some cutting in the scan and cut. So a lot of people ask me about the SVG files, and they work a little different in the scan and cut. So you kind of have to, we're going to talk a little bit about that in the scan and cut class. We'll just do that, but we'll cut out all the pieces for the pillow so we can do it without having to trim in the hoop. You don't have to if you don't want to, but you can do it that way. So that's what we're going to do the last week of September. So, all right. So if you have any questions, get me through, text me through Facebook, email me at the store, call me at the store, and I will see you next week, and we'll put our pillow together. So thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.